Good morning, everybody. Good morning, online folks. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. My name's Erika. Welcome to the Tonglen workshop. I'm so grateful to be able to be with you all here today. I feel like there's nothing we need more right now than compassion. And this practice in particular, if you're familiar with it, you know this. If you're new to it, welcome to the world of Tonglen, is something that can grow our hearts in the presence of all that's challenging. And that's one of the reasons why it's been a lifelong practice for me. I feel like it helps us be present with the beauty and the difficult things, the horror, the everything in between. And life challenges us, it elevates us, it can make us freeze and pull back, and we can move through that with kindness towards ourselves and others, because we are all in this together. So that's my little spiel. And my enthusiasm for this practice will continue to ooze out of me and I hope grow some in you. And I want to welcome our online folks. Hi, everybody. If you're so inclined to put your camera on, that would be wonderful. There is going to be a point in this workshop where we're actually going to interact with one another, and including y'all. So having your face up, unless you have some kind of bandwidth issue and your internet can't support the camera, please join us on camera. And I think by way of introduction, I'll save more introduction for after an opening practice, except to say that I'm so grateful to the San Francisco Dharma Collective, my new Sangha. I'm just loving this place. I'm recently connected here. And I'm very, very grateful for them hosting this, making the room for this, creating this beautiful space for us to practice. And more about that later. Thank you, Mace and Karen, for being here and supporting this today, and Noam and all the people behind the scenes. So with that, I'd like to invite us to, and also remind you, if you have a device with you, like a phone or something, you can silence, preferably turn off or do the do not disturb thing, because even those vibrations make sounds. And if it comes up, no big deal, but let's try to do something about that. And so we're going to do a brief opening practice, and taking some time as we begin this to really notice how you're holding your body. I think this is super important for any practice. You want to find, we're not being real rigid here about your particular position, but finding a way to hold your body that feels stable so that you're not going to need to do a whole lot of adjusting. So take a moment to do that. If you're in a chair, I really encourage you to have your feet flat on the floor rather than cross-legged. If they reach, if not, you may put a little cushion or blanket there. And if you're on a cushion, really feeling where your legs, knees come into contact with the earth. The earth supports us. So much gratitude for that. And feeling that strength beneath you and letting yourself really rely on that, so that if you invite in a deep breath, breathing from your belly, opening. And when you do that, feel the space inside you that's created by that in-breath, making more room there, unpacking tension, and then allowing the out-breath just to be a relaxation of that in-breath, and letting your weight settle through your feet, through your knees, into the earth beneath you. Maybe reinforcing a sense of being rooted, held. Noticing how you're holding your shoulders. Taking a minute to try to find a way of holding yourself that's not too stiff and not too slouched. If you're on a chair or couch, maybe shifting a little toward the front of your seat so that your back is not slouched against the back of it, which can help you stay a little more alert. Now, I'm going to be offering instruction through breath. I know that some people sometimes find the breath challenging to work with. If that's true for you, just tune into your sense of where you feel yourself connected to the earth, where your seat meets the cushion, where your feet meet the floor. Otherwise, inviting in a couple more of these slow, deep breaths that I was guiding us with a moment ago. Opening and breathing in however's easy, nose, mouth, both. Feel how big you can get. Let the belly relax and expand. Really thinking of this spaciousness as enhancing your ability to be present with more. Aerating your heart, and then gently relaxing. The out-breath is just a release. And then, when you're ready, letting go of this deliberate, deep breathing and just allowing the body to settle into its natural rhythm of breath. No need to try to control it. And maybe just sitting silently for a bit, noticing the feeling of being in a breathing body, the soft rhythm, the rising and falling. And whatever else might be going on in your mind, it may be busy, it may be quiet, that's okay, it doesn't matter right now. Just gently noticing the feeling of being in the breathing body and settling your awareness in that and coming back to it if your awareness strays. Gently, lightly, abiding. Now gently taking your attention and noticing where you feel the air of the room entering your body. So it might be the nostrils or the mouth, however you're breathing. See if you can kind of locate the feeling of the breath, of the air coming in. And noticing the quality of that, how it feels when it moves into your body. And if you're like me right now, the air of the room is cooler, kind of cool even with the heater on. The cool air coming in. Just noticing that quality for a moment. Again, just with your natural breath cycle, also attending to the feeling of the breath leaving your body. And it might be soft, it might be a little warm. So it's likely you're noticing a difference that the air coming in is cool and the breath leaving you is warm. Just sitting and noticing that. Cool air in, warm air out. Naturally with every breath. And we can play with this a little bit and think of that out-breath, that warm out-breath, as an offering of warmth from your heart. Every breath out, sending a little warmth into the world around you. And maybe that in-breath as an opening to what is in the moment, just taking in what is and sending out warmth. The breath cycle is a dramatic transformation, not just in temperature, but in, if you know anything about physiology, the gas composition. We change the air we breathe. And that warmth, quite literally on some level, does come from our heart that's pumping the blood through our bodies. Cool air in, bringing in what is, and transforming it into this warm gift to the world on the out-breath. Cool air in, a warm gift on the out-breath. Every in-breath an opening to the moment. and your willingness to be present. Every out-breath a warm offering to the world. And then when you're ready, you can gently let this imagery and this focus on the transformation just kind of settle. And returning to just being present in the breathing body, in this body grounded, connected to the earth. And taking a moment to visit in your heart your intention in being here and coming. What is it you're hoping will come from this work for you? What do you want to take from this? My intention is to really help you see, if in a way maybe you didn't before you came here, what Tonglen is about, and help it reinforce compassion in each of you. At least what we do here today, and maybe something to take with you. I want to say a couple things about what we're going to do in the next hour and 40 minutes now. And then offer an opportunity to check in on how that practice went, any reflections. We're going to do a lot of practice in here. I want to spend some time after we do a little check-in and discussion to talk about what Tonglen is. I realize there might be people new to it or people who've done it before, and some people love it, some people say, it can do that to folks. So we'll talk a little bit about it, and then engage in some exercises, one exercise off the cushion that's more interactive, and then long chunks of meditation. So mostly practice in one form or another, but we will do a little talking about it. Before we start sharing, is there anybody here who's brand new to this place? The Dharma. Welcome, welcome. So happy to have you. This is a collective, and that means there's not like a senior teacher on top of everything. It's run by the people who do this, a lot of volunteers. We'll talk more about that later. Mace, I'm going to let you get up here and do your spiel at the end. Mace is at the front desk. Karen's back there doing the online stuff, and a lot of volunteers make this stuff happen. But the community and the Sangha are so much a part of it, and being a member of the community, I think in any kind of context like this, it's real important to talk about how we are present with one another. So when you're sharing or when you're discussing, when you're sharing your experience, to be mindful that others might have things to say, so make time for it. And also, I think it's really important to speak from your own experience rather than comment on others' experience, even if you feel you have like some great advice for them or whatever, just to kind of speak from where you're at. And when other people are speaking, to really listen. You know, there's this, glad to see this turning into a meme, something about, you know, to listen, to hear rather than to wait to speak. It's kind of like, you know, right? So think about that one. And all right, I think that's enough in terms of logistics. So how did that practice go? Anybody have any reflections, comments? We have a microphone here, and it's not to amplify, but so that the people online can hear anything that's said in here. So we'll pass that around. Anybody? Or have any questions about it? Yeah.
I love Tonglen. It's one of my favorites, and I really loved the breathing practice that you did with the in and out and the warmth in your heart. I never received that instruction, and it was really sweet, and I really loved it. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's, do we have an online? Wait, yes, I can't read your name in the tiny print. Claudia. Hi, Claudia. Thank you.
Oops.
There you go. We can hear you.
I don't know what happened. I disappeared.
Good. We can hear you.
Oops. Okay. Well, oh, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, that was a very nice practice. And I also enjoyed Tonglen a lot. I have a question though. My understanding of Tonglen is that you think of somebody or even yourself who has an affliction, and then you try to sort of imaginatively remove that affliction from somebody and then send out like good vibes or good energy or whatever to that person. And so I was trying to explain that to my husband, and he goes like, "And do you really believe that?" And I told him, well, I feel like I think it's energy, and I do believe that we can send good energy to others, but I was wondering if you have any thoughts or comments on that, or what do you think? I mean, it makes me feel good to send out, and hopefully, I mean, trying to think about relieving somebody, but I just was wondering about your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So I have a couple things to say in response to that. So the first thing, when you said you enjoyed the practice, then you said your understanding of Tonglen involves the imagery and the transformation of the suffering of another. And then there was the further question of like, does it work? Or,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And first of all, I'll just have to, just so you know, I'm both a scientist and a meditation teacher. So I can address the rational mind stuff fine. And you can talk about it all on that level if you want. So that's the good news. So I just want to go back to the first part of it, just to say, in case it's not clear, that little practice we just did, in some sense, is Tonglen. In some sense, it's a preliminary. And the idea is it's kind of, I have encountered the cool air in, warm air out thing in other Tibetan practices. However, not before I started doing this and kind of came on it on my own. So it's out there. I don't think it's usually part of this instruction, but I like to do it with my students because I feel like we all have this. It's right there. Except for one time I had a student who was like in another part of the world. It was really hot there, so the outside air was like, okay. But everybody else, anyway. But we can access that, we can feel it, and it's a transformation that we're walking around with all the time. And then kind of tuning into we can imbue meaning to every little thing if we want. And that warm out breath is one of them, right? So we can do that. So that's why I like it. It also kind of gets you in the vibe of what you have to offer the world and being present with it. We will, shortly after we do a little more talking, and I like to use these questions as an opportunity to do the teaching that I feel is necessary. We'll get into the formal practice where we work with the imagery, Claudia, like you're probably more familiar, and conceptualizing the difficulty of ourselves or others as having some form that we meet, take in, and transform. That's a very important word, which is why I like the breath thing, because there's a transformation of the air as it touches us. We are not taking in suffering and keeping it. And, because one of the first reactions that people sometimes have to Tonglen is like, I don't need any more suffering. Why should I take someone else's on? But you're not. You're offering your compassionate heart. And I will argue that each one of you, in all our glorious imperfections, has so much goodness in here. We're really so much goodness. Just showing up here has already demonstrated that. Right? So much goodness in here. And can we connect to that and, bring it out there, use that in some way. So that's how that practice kind of sets us up. We can look more at this does it work question. However, I like to kind of take a framework that I really owe to my colleague, Thupten Jinpa, who I worked with in developing the compassion training program at Stanford. Thupten Jinpa, if you don't know him, is a primary translator for the Dalai Lama. He's also quite an accomplished scholar and teacher. And he has a book that I put on the recommended reading list called Fearless Heart, that's about compassion. And anyway, he talks about Tonglen. He said one thing that Tonglen does is it reinforces our altruistic resolve. Reinforces, it's a lot of syllables, our altruistic resolve. I like to take it on a more basic level. It helps us practice helping and our willingness to be of service. Because what we're doing, and I'll just cut to the chase because we don't have a lot of time this morning, when I start guiding you through the formal practice, we're giving suffering we're acknowledging suffering. Usually you work with a target, so it can be the self, a loved one, someone you don't know, anybody, all of us, but you imagine you give it a form in your mind, and you're going to bring your brilliant heart energy that we all have to this suffering and use this engine to help eradicate some of the suffering, little bits at a time, and you're offering that strength and courage and warmth, breathing in some of it and letting it transform. That's the thing. You're not applying the suffering to yourself. You're transforming it and sending it out. In a sense, and so with each cycle, you're taking a little bit more of that suffering, transforming it into healing energy. That's like the whole breath cycle is doing that, right? If breath is a challenge for you, you can just imagine opening your heart to it, let it hit that heart, and there's like an explosion of energy emanating from your chest. This is all imagery. It's fun to leave rational mind at the door with Tonglen. However, what I love, you can leave rational mind at the door and like this magical, you can get involved in a magical process. What you're doing there, though, is you're rehearsing helping. You're practicing in your mind, can I help remove some of your suffering? Look, I'm going to transform it and send some goodness back out. That is a whole exercise in the mind. We know this is for your husband. We know from a lot of research in animals and increasing research in humans that we have things called mirror neurons, mirror neuron networks. And what these are networks of neurons. A lot of them are in the motor action parts of the brain. That's where it's been most established. That when we, in our minds, practice doing something, like going through dance moves, or procedural things, that it actually activates the network, strengthens the networks that support those actions in real life. No one's done a Tonglen mirror neuron study, as far as I know. There has been some research on Tonglen that I'm not going to get in the weeds with it. Some of it's good, some of it's challenging methodologically, and this is not a science seminar. We could do that sometime if you want. However, rehearsing things reinforces the networks to support it. And these kind of practices do support people being more generous in the world. There are data on that. So not that you need the data to do it. However, one of the things, since I have those two hats, I like to offer what we know. And I think it's really cool that by doing this, that kind of gets us all motivated to be of help and grows your heart, makes you feel bigger and better able to accommodate things. It's actually practicing helping. You're practicing helping. And that's why I like to think of this practice as an engaged compassion practice. A lot of traditional practices of compassion, we are, witnessing suffering in the world, feeling moved by it, that, this empathic connection is very important. And we use that feeling of, I know what it's like to suffer. I see their suffering. It doesn't feel good. And that suffering might be, I know what it feels like to be in pain, or I know what it feels like to be tired or hungry or have someone close to me hurt or dying. And that empathy fuels it. And is a motivation for reaching out and starting this transformative process. So that's a long answer with some of our instruction. And Tom, you had a question, yeah. Did that help, Claudia? Good.
So I really loved that opportunity to transform the air and to sort of, I could really see that that's a kind of a nice substrate for thinking about transforming energy or whatever. And it also, because of the emphasis on it, it also triggered something in me that pops up every now and then, which is like I used to work as an epidemiologist at the public health department here. And so there's this thing about like, I've got this both a rational reason and a kind of a neurotic reason to be worried about contagious diseases. And for people who are like immunocompromised, it's like there's this air here, and I know there's lots of little things, and I know we've got like these big deal HEPA filters in the furnace thing here, so the air is cycling around, and even if it's not heating it, it's purifying in a certain way. But I'm just, and I was thinking like, well, is this like a metaphor for taking in somebody else's suffering that I'm breathing in? Because I love the fact that we're all in the same room, which is why I do this rather than going online, because we're all sharing the same air. But it also like just kind of like pokes at this background that I have in epidemiology, and I don't know if this is a weird question or not. Well, it is a weird question, but I'm wondering what you think about it. And I'm sorry if I'm freaking anybody else out.
No.
My paranoia, it's not your problem, it's my problem.
Well, I think I think COVID really changed the way we look at these breathe in, and I was relieved that when I first started teaching, I was actually teaching an online course all the way through it, so that was fine because everybody was in their own little space, but it did give me pause. I think the one thing that I would encourage you to do when those thoughts come up in this context, because I don't think you're asking me a public health question, but more how to work with it in practice, this is where I think I lean heavily on Pema Chodron for things Tonglen. She's my guiding light here, and she talks about how when these kinds of things come up, you just fold that into the practice. And now I'm sitting here for everybody in the room who's also feeling neurotic about breathing in germs, and I'm going to acknowledge that, right? So that's just another piece of the stuff that we go through. And you can bring, that's what I love about this practice. It's like, okay, what's next? Bring in that form of suffering or difficulty. And what you'll do, like any kind of, you see how this is a self-compassion practice in a really deep way, even if you're practicing for someone else, because you are, it has this ability to change how you feel about the situation that you're in. Yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. Yeah, of course.
I was just going to say that what why I'm so glad you're doing this workshop, because I haven't been practicing Tonglen, and it's often been one of my favorite, most necessary practices. And the reason is it does two things for me. I don't, my conditioned self does not believe that I have Buddha nature. Like, it's like, maybe everybody else, but not me, I got, right? So, and it helps me connect and find that. So, and then my conditioned self is a lot like other human beings in the world. And I see how I could be very easily on the same continuum of the folks who are ICE agents right now. But I would just be like, to them, not, you know what I mean? Like, I can see that, like, that battening down, that hardening, that sort of almost tribalism, like hatred, you know, and I do not want my heart. I don't want my heart to shrivel up into hatred. So whether it helps another person, like, I don't fucking know, but it helps me have a heart that feels essential these days. And it helps me believe in that heart.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful, Mace. Thank you. And it was a great illustration of how it can help you to be present with that. And the Buddha nature thing, there's a couple things I'd like to comment on. You qualified it with the conditioned self, and that, you know, some of us might have a problem seeing connecting to our basic goodness. You know, and just to think about that as any act of kindness or generosity to yourself or others. You know, Buddha nature, that phrase has this like heavy connotation that we have to be Buddha-like, you know, and it's speaking to this basic essence in us. And we, you know, just a little scientific reality check too. We are social creatures that evolved in cooperation with one another. Everything works better when we share and cooperate. You know, don't let these selfish gene people fool you. I mean, there's a lot of evidence of this. So this is how we are designed by nature to benefit from being together. And so we've got this, you know, you see social facilitation going on in cockroaches. I mean, it goes way back down on the phylogenetic tree. I'm not going to go into a lecture on that, as tempting as it is. Anyway, so you got the goodness. We're all imperfect. And the most important thing is choosing to go there. You know, because even if you have difficulty emotionally connecting to your warm heart nature, it's making a choice to be present and to do something to better the place that you're in, better the world, or just connect. Just connect. There's a couple things that you said. I'm going to does anybody else have a pressing question? Because we could spend all day on this stuff. I just want to get back to, I feel like before we start talking a little bit more about the formal practice, I want to say what I think are some preconditions or prerequisites for the practice. And it's not like do you meet this checklist? You know, you can't, but it's more things that are really important for it. And they are, one is awareness, attention. And this is true for any compassion practice. You know, you have to be paying attention to what's going on. You know, you have to notice that there's suffering, and suffering meaning just any kind of yucky suffering. You know, definitions of suffering are an interesting topic, but noticing there's difficulty in the world, there's things that are unpleasant, that's a universal, right? And pay attention to it, to your own, and to when it's happening around you. So you need to, you know, have that skill and or reinforce the skill of noticing, because it all starts there. If you don't notice the problem, then you kind of get stuck. Another key piece is to embrace common humanity. Acknowledge it at the very least. And what this means is knowing that even in the presence of all these differences, and you mentioned Ice Age, you know, the wide variety of differences, that we all are just trying to get through life on planet Earth, you know, and that the things that we share are actually bigger than the things that separate us. And it helps a lot with the connection and the caring. It's really, really big, because it's sort of like, oh yeah, they're suffering. I don't like suffering. Or they're angry about a different thing, but anger doesn't feel good. It might be motivating for a little while, but you burn out fast from it, I mean, so I want this feeling to go away. Or we're suffering, some of the manifestations of the divisions in the world right now are different responses to the crisis that we're in. People have different solutions to the crisis we're in, but we're all in this crisis of planet, of economy, of getting enough food and healthcare or whatever it might be. Different stories, but this basic theme. I know what it's like to suffer there. And so recognizing what we all have in common is so all over the world and across species even. And then the last thing that I'm going to mention now, there are other things, is some connection and maintenance of self-compassion. Awareness of your own needs, your own difficulty. This is important in any kind of, well, it's important for everything. It's very important we're doing compassion practices because you are connecting with, you're really being present with suffering, and you're inviting it. Even if you're not doing Tonglen, if you're working with compassion, that means you're seeing the suffering in the world. Compassion's not loving kindness. They're like two sides of the same coin. I'm just going to say something about that for a minute. I love what Alan Wallace says about this. Alan Wallace is a former monk, amazing scholar, one of the people who, if you know Eve and Cultivating Emotional Balance, he's one of the senior teachers of CEB from the beginning. But he says, loving kindness is about, seeing, your loved one, yourself, blossom. May you come to fruition. May you be happy. May you flourish. May you be all these things. May be glorious. May you unfold like a flower. Loving kindness sees. Compassion witnesses. It witnesses how we can be curled up in a ball and suffer. Can we unfold from that and be at ease? And also flourish. That's the loving kind. So they're connected. But compassion I have one colleague who likes to talk about is bringing love to suffering. But you have to see the suffering. You have to notice it's going on. You connect. You understand that suffering is not pleasant, and we want to be free of it. And then we, offer a gift. But the self-compassion is important because we will work with targets in this practice. Targets mean, as Claudia mentioned, you bring someone to mind. Usually when you're formally doing it, you bring someone to mind and to work with in your mind's eye or your mind's heart if you're not a visual person, right? And who you invite in, that's where you have to be careful with it. Do you want to bring the ice agents right away? Some people do. They've been doing the Olympics of Tonglen. I'm not going to get political, but since you mentioned, just a little bit, just because you mentioned. But really, or someone you've been having a lot, or someone you had who you love, because we'll say, bring in a loved one. I'll prompt you because we start with the easier folks where the vibe for connection is there. But be careful. Do you want to bring in a loved one where you just had a serious argument? Or you're worried about them judging you all the time? That's your choice. But to titrate that, be mindful of how big your reach is in the beginning. Or there might be some days where you can invite that in. But you have to strike a careful balance here. There's a fine line between knowing when you're, reaching, we talk about reaching, there's growth, no pain, no gain. You got to stretch a little bit to grow. If you always stay here where it's cozy, you won't grow. You got to stretch a little bit to grow. But you can go into overwhelm, and that could be too much. It could be, and you don't want to invite anybody in where there's been trauma or serious difficulty. But there's a fine line between pulling back because you're getting close to overwhelm and avoidance. So you have to work with that. You had a question? Yeah, wait for the microphone so the folks online can hear. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing
what's your name?
Bit. I'm Dayani.
Dayani, nice to meet you.
Yeah, I just it would be helpful if you could speak a little bit more to that, like picking the right person to enter in with this, because you actually just touched on it, like saying, it's not necessarily helpful to bring someone where you've had trauma. yeah, could you speak more, like, for somebody who's, I've never done it, what would be a good example of like somebody to bring in? Like, does the person necessarily have to have some kind of you have to have some tension with, or can it just be like someone I have no tension with at all? Like, yeah, what do you recommend?
Okay, thank you for the question. And this is really about targets of the practice. And let me put this just for a couple minutes here. This is a good opportunity to talk through the practice. And then we can answer Dayani's question about choosing target and how to do that mindfully and with some self-compassion. And then I want to say just a few more things about what Tonglen does. So the practice formally, and I'll guide us through, we're going to take a little bio break about, I like to call it, meaning like take really quick, don't go across the street and get a coffee quick, but like real quick bio break, and then we'll come back and we'll do a lot of practices. But I want to talk us through what actually happens with the meditation instead of talking around it for so long. That everything that we did with the opening practice was in the spirit. The first thing that's important is to really notice your own heart, your goodness that you're bringing, and with all its imperfections. It could be a reflection of how you treat your cat. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be this major hero. Just what are the goodness, the helping or the kindness, and really realizing that goodness, even though we're growing our hearts, it can get infinite and it's glorious. Really, again, I'm going to guide you through some more magical kind of thinking around this, but it's tapping into this nature. And I like to kind of get that flowing first, because that's going to be what you're offering. I think that's important because it helps make you solid, and it helps you really realize the gift and the transformative nature of this. And that's another thing that's super important with Tonglen, is to remember it's a transformation. And you're going to be looking at your heart and the compassion and loving kindness, which we know are boundless qualities, infinite qualities, that we're going to be bringing this to situations and people. So really getting grounded in that. And this is going to become the transformative machine. And then you bring to mind, let's start with a loved one. We usually work through a progression of targets. I'm going to have us start with ourselves and then move to a loved one. Then you usually I look at it as like you're moving out in this sort of, the loved one, yourself, that might be hopefully in this easier zone of the circle of compassion, then moving out to someone you don't know. This is a traditional progression in these kinds of practices. Many of you might be familiar with it. Someone you don't know, and then someone with whom you've had difficulty. And that's especially where you have to be careful. So not, especially early in practicing, you don't want to bring it in right away. It's just like if you just started running, you don't want to do a marathon tomorrow, right? You want to just say, I'm just going to go a mile or whatever. So bring in someone in your life that, maybe you have an ongoing challenge with. You don't see things the right way. We have people in our lives, sometimes they're family members, colleagues, where you just kind of like rub each other the wrong way. I tend to encourage that kind of thing, but something that could benefit, right? So that's difficult. And then we could play, depending on your own level and your own judgment, play with those targets. I do encourage people, once they get going, if they find that a target isn't working real well, that you can switch, but try not to do a bunch of switching around. You will benefit the most if you stick with a target at any of these levels. And the reason why is this is where it makes a difference, and it's not magic. Any dynamic, any interaction, like let's say there's someone you have an ongoing argument with or frustration with. That's usually a situation where you're both coming in, you see each other and you like trigger each other. You feel it in your body, right? Sometimes people like that, you feel yourself tighten, the armor comes up. She's going to say this to me. I know she is, that kind of thing, right? And that's your mind is so biased. You have it all figured out, right? What if, if you start working with that person in your practice, any kind of compassion practice, frankly, but Tonglen in particular, you're not going to be coming into that interaction with this. You're going to be coming in more open and soft. It's more like a keto, right? And that's bringing different energy to the dynamic and now to social psychology. You're not coming in with the same kinds of statements, kinds of nonverbal behaviors. You're coming in with something different. And eventually they're going to see that you're coming in with something different. So the whole thing is, does it change them? It changes the interaction, and you're both in it, right? So it can shift things that way. So there's that. So, and then all beings, etc. So we're going to work with that, but we give the suffering in another, we give it a form. I'll remind you again when we get into the practice in the second half of class that we usually give it a visual form. Traditionally, there's like black oily smoke, if you read the translations from the Tibetan. This is where I give people license to work with imagery that's better. I don't like the color connotations, the bad, good, light, dark. But you have to think of it as some obscuration or burden that will be lightened up. And I like to, so sometimes if you want to take a different, on the traditional imagery, you can think of like a big rain cloud and that you're going to bring sunshine to it, or the other one I like is, imagine the person's carrying a lot of bags and you're going to take one from them. So they have a heavy load and you're going to lighten their load. There does have to be an element of you kind of taking something that's unpleasant and transforming it for them. But feel free, I'll use some imagery, but feel free to work with what works for you in your own mind. And you're gradually taking more of that, heavy load and lightening it up with every in-breath, breathing it in. And when you breathe in, you're bringing it right into that brilliant flame of your heart, which eradicates that heavy cloud or load or whatever, and send on the out breath the goodness back to them. So it's like you're cycling through. You can imagine if they're carrying a lot of bags, by the end of this, they have just a little tiny bag in their hands. Or it's not cloudy and foggy anymore, it's sunny, if that's what you want. San Francisco makes it a little challenging on that one. But are you following, everybody? That's the basic practice. And so you're transforming, and one of the things that you get from this, first of all, you're not owning the suffering, you're transforming it. It's very energizing to do. And it's also incredibly courageous. One of the things that we traditionally talk about as the benefit of this practice is that it eradicates ego clinging, which is the typical Buddhist way of talking about it. Or you can say it puts a little crack in the armor of self-protection. If you've erected this kind of like me against the world thing, or everything's trying to hurt me, it kind of cracks it open. And that's why we talk about this as a very courageous practice. It builds your willingness to be present and do something about suffering. So that's the basic guidance. And it also, in addition to eradicating ego clinging, it reinforces helping. It gets you primed to do things about the situation you're in. Any other comments or questions? Sure, if there's yeah, go ahead. Diani.
Yes, Dayani, I just have one more question. Speaking as someone who I think has some armor up, I just wonder if you could maybe touch on a little bit of like resentment, if you're known to be already a helper, like who gives a lot. I'm already noticing, like, as I'm trying to pick someone, I'm like, no, but like I already gave a lot to this person. I already gave a lot to that person. Like, what about them giving something to me? And I'm just going to admit it. I don't like feeling that, but I do feel it. And so if you're a helper and you're a giver and it kind of feels like you're a little tired, I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to like, yeah, how we can, because I'm feeling resistance to picking someone because I'm tired.
And you're so candid. Thank you. Anybody else relate to that? Yeah. Resentment is a tough one, and it's a very important thing to name, because resentment is the kind of thing that can destroy relationships if it's not worked with, right? I mean, because it's just, it gets you disengaged. and you don't want to be a part of it. Their data on that. Anyway, so this is what I will harken back to what I said to Tom about the fear of contagion earlier, that just you can kind of disengage. If that comes up for any target, you can pick as carefully as you want, but the resentment could come up, right? So if that comes up and it's like, oh, you can let go of the particular focus practice for a second and go, I'm going to practice for anybody who's feeling resentment right now and me. And we know how yucky that feels. And we don't want to feel that. And then you get into this harsh self-criticism. So it becomes very much like you can give the resentment a form or not. And you say, I'm just going to breathe in that yuckiness of resentment and send out some relief because I know I could need it and we all could use it. It's totally flexible that way. Yeah. And we all have armor. It's just part of conditioned existence, right? Okay, so if we are, there's so many other things I could say, but I'm going to save that. Let's take a quick bio break if you need it, if you need to run to the toilet or get a quick drink of water, just a couple minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll go into an exercise. All right. So welcome back. And for those of you online, we're back. We'd love to see your faces. Especially for this next part. So what we're going to do next, it might be a little different. We're actually going to do an exercise where we're in a dyad with someone else. We'll do it in person, just pair up, and if we have an uneven number of folks, we could do, actually, Mace, would you be willing to jump in if we have an uneven? Yeah, it's great if we could keep it in pairs. If not, we could have a triad. Online, you're going to participate too, and we're going to use our breakout room function on Zoom, so we'd love to see faces to know people are there. Hi, thank you. Let's see some faces. Great, thank you, everybody. Let me talk us through what we're going to do, and especially since if you're online on Zoom, Karen is going to broadcast instructions to you on screen. However, I want to make sure everybody has in mind, you can do it, I know you can. And if that all doesn't work out perfectly, that's okay, we'll fold that into the practice, right? So this is what we're going to do. You're going to be paired up with someone else, and if you came with someone, I actually suggest you to be paired with someone you don't know. I might just see how it naturally happens. And after saying hi, this is going to be structured. We're going to first have a part where we're talking to the other person, where we're having speech. But the first thing you'll do when you're paired up after saying hi is you'll choose who speaks first. You're going to have roles of speaker and listener. And this is really important, and because when the speaker's speaking, the listener listens empathically. This is what you're going to be speaking about. You're going to be sharing some experience, something easy to access, maybe recent, where you had some frustration or difficulty. And here, I'm encouraging not something too overwhelming. You're going to have just a couple minutes to speak, but maybe sharing a recent frustration, something that happened with a neighbor, just something easy, accessible that you feel like you can talk about in a couple minutes and you're willing to share in that context. You're just going to describe what happened, what you felt, etc., and that'll probably take the 3 minutes. The listener's role during that time is to listen empathically, and what this means is kind of put yourself in their shoes. What would it feel like to have gone through what they're telling you about, right? And so this is called an empathic attunement exercise. Yes?
And the thing we're sharing should have been something difficult that we just had?
Something that disappointing, difficult, frustrating, brought up resentment, something manageable to talk about that you feel, yeah. It's just something yucky. And the listener listens. And then we will prompt you either with an online statement or me saying, okay, Now switch roles. And at that point, the speaker becomes the listener and the listener becomes the speaker, and it's their turn to share, okay? But the listener's role is to not say anything, not say, oh yeah, I know what that's like, even if it feels like it's something supportive, just listen empathically. At the very end, we'll tell you when 3 minutes is over, and you can thank each other. Then we're gonna give you a minute or two to just talk for a second in case there's something you were dying to blurt out or whatever, and just any quick thing that you need to share. Then the next part will be silent. After you've done that, share the difficult experience, I'm going to guide you if you're here, and what will happen online is you'll get one statement of instructions and then you follow it, but it's easy. We're going to silently sit with our interaction partner, take them in for a moment, and then close your eyes and imagine that you have this magical ability on your in-breath to take away everything that's frustrating for them, everything that's difficult for them, anything that was annoying them or whatever. It doesn't have to be specific to their story, but it can be. And just say, on the in-breath, I'm gonna magically remove that from your life. And on the out-breath, you're gonna send them whatever they need to fix it, to feel better, to magically fix their problem. And that's what's nice. You don't have to know what will fix it. Just imagine that you could send it out to them. And just sit there with that, with your partner for a minute and do that. And then we'll prompt you. Now, online, if your eyes are closed and the prompt comes on screen, that's the one challenge. But we're just going to do this for about a minute so you can check and see what's up in the room, okay? So do you understand? We're first going to do this sharing, the empathic attunement. You choose, say hi to your partner, choose who goes first. First person will share a difficult experience, partner listens, then you switch your roles. Then you have a minute to just kind of chat for a second before doing this silent exercise where you sit with the same partner and you do this breathing in. I can take away all your difficulties magically. Breathing out, I'm going to send you whatever you need to feel better. Clear? How did you find that? And just to name a little bit about, the interaction feels a little awkward, that, you're instructed not to speak. This actually is something that comes from, I don't know if you're familiar with the field of nonviolent communication, the work of Marshall Rosenberg, which really advocates, compassionate listening and, responding. And so it's a little artificial to be told you can't speak, but it's also a great exercise in really connecting. Yes, question.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Marlena. I guess on that note, so I didn't speak when Rihanna was speaking, but I did speak with my face, I think, a little bit. Like, I was, like, nodding when I cast, or, like, my face would kind of go, like, in a sad mode when there's something sad, or, like, smile when you said a joke. I don't know if you noticed that, and I was like, okay, like, try to have a neutral face, don't talk with your face, but I'm very expressive as a person, so they're just, like, kind of naturally... Like, I'm surprised, my eyes open up. Is that okay? And, like, being silent? Is that
As someone who studies facial expressions and has a hard time limiting their own, I think it's okay as long, the strict practice is to try to just not be specific, not be so responsive. However, I feel like there's degrees of discomfort we can impose on the interaction, so I think as long as you're just there, not interjecting and not being overly trying to communicate certain statements that way, I think it's fine. Have you ever I've been on silent retreats where you're not supposed to, some are looser about that and some are like you can't make, so I think it's fine. It's just to really get more in listening mode,
Just to follow up to that, I find it very cold to also be just expressionless when that person is sharing something so intimate and vulnerable. So part of it was also out of like connection and compassion, and just be like, this person is like sharing something really private and I'm just expressionless. But maybe the Buddhist part is to be expressionless. So I don't know enough about the technique.
Well, it's interesting. So the question is, how much does it become about easing your distress at not doing anything? Right. That's where this stuff, like, how much am I saying something because they need to hear it, or because I feel the need to say something because it's uncomfortable not to try to help. it's that whole thing about one of the other guy, I didn't mention this when we started, but when I do ongoing classes, I talk about when we share, when we speak in discussion, not to speak about other people's experience, but also refrain from advising. If you have a suggestion, you can ask, would you like do you want to hear a suggestion, rather than just offering it? And we know that can be a difficult dynamic in some relationships. When someone's going through something difficult and they're sharing their experience, they need to get it out, and the partner starts telling them how to fix it. That's not often what we want to hear, because we want to just get it out, right? So it's an interesting exercise to think, how much is this about me, or is it about them? So all of that, and I'm not going to tell you one way at the same time. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, I what I really liked about that practice was the sitting and doing the Tonglen for however long it was before speaking back and having a conversation. There's that experience of speaking from your heart. That's a thing that we don't usually often do.
Yeah.
And having sat with it for a little bit, it felt much more like speaking from the heart afterwards as well. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And part of the strategy behind doing the empathic talking exercise, and then the silent, breathe in, breathe out, is to kind of build a little empathic connection before going into that. But sometimes we just go right into that silent thing without having done that before. It's just, I'm curious about how that transition from speaking to just being present and imagining your ability to help the other. Any reflections on that or questions?
Actually, I felt it made it so much easier just open in that way, because we already went through that process of just opening your heart through the listening and opening your heart through the speaking. But then the next part just flowed very naturally for me, rather than just jumping right into that. So I think it really worked well.
Great. That's good. It was sort of a priming. I see.
Know that there's obviously construction going on out there, so it's real hard. I'm not sure if other people are having a hard time hearing the room, so.
Yeah, okay.
Because that microphone doesn't amplify our voices.
Yeah, thank you.
Feels like it does.
Yeah.
Just speaking to moving to the silent part. I found myself just in the first few seconds being tempted to think about a solution, and then I was like, okay, that's not what we're doing. And so one thing that helped me at that point was to kind of just pick some sort of broader concept. So what am I taking away? Trauma, or something, broad like that, that's sort of not necessarily picking out a specific facet of the story, because then it was sort of easier to, I don't know if that makes sense, but it was sort of it's not even super specific to the example, because it's sort of, there's always so much more to it anyway than just the story. And so it's sort of thinking about what's behind all of that. Okay, let's take all of that away. So that helped me.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I also like the kind of the surrender to not having to figure it out, which I think is lovely, because it's a heart opening kind of thing, because we can't know all the things ever. What's your name again? Mackenzie, yes. And you are?
I'm Tori.
Tori. Some of you folks I recognize from Wednesday night. I'm just trying to learn.
Right on. Yeah, for sure. I just overall, I've done Tonglen, done dyad work, but I don't know that I've done Tonglen and dyad work together. And so that was really cool. And in a lot of ways, it reminded me of doing imago dialogue and couples therapy. Oh, yeah. Done a lot of that. It's great. For example, but I really enjoyed it. And I felt I was like, oh, this has so many great applications. I'm so glad we came to this together. This is awesome.
There you go.
So thank you. I just,
great.
Some of the nonviolent communication and parallels that were really helpful.
Yeah. And great. Wonderful, all the things. We good? So that was a great prime to go into formal practice now. We've been kind of dancing around it. We've been doing it all along, all of it. I kind of sneak it in. But so if you need to wiggle for a second, we're going to go into about a 15-minute-ish, maybe a little bit longer meditation. And we will, again, remembering what I said, I will offer some imagery because I'll be guiding you, right? So I'm going to offer imagery throughout. And remember what I said earlier, feel free to customize your imagery to make it work for you. But remember, I always bristle. Someone once said, oh, there can be a bunch of leaves in the sidewalk and I'm blowing them away. I'm like, there is some, there's a little bit of sacrifice in this. You know what I mean? You're like taking on, you're reaching out from a place of generosity. Oh, let me you can rake someone's leaves. Okay, that works. But you know what I mean? That it should be like carrying the heavy weight, clearing up the foggy day, whatever. Some kind of thing that symbolizes that they're burdened and you're going to help bring ease to that, or light or space. And that to experiment with, that you don't have to know what they need. You can just send them healing energy and then that's going to be better. I love that piece of it, that you don't have to figure it out. It's not rational. All right, so finding your posture again, making sure you're in a place where the body feels stable, rooted. Taking a moment to make sure that you're not using excess tension. Holding up, notice sometimes I'm holding up my shoulders when I don't need to. So breathing in a slow, deep cleansing breath to kind of reset the physiology and also feel this expansiveness of the in-breath, opening, unpacking. And gradually letting it release. The out-breath is just a letting go, a relaxation of the in-breath. Feeling your weight settle into the cushion or the floor. So if you like, a couple more of those slow, deep, cleansing breaths. Letting the body feel stable, strong, open. Roshi Joan Halifax talks about how compassion practices give us strong back, soft front. Strong back, we're staying here, present, opening to suffering. The soft front is the heart willing to be touched. That can be a posture suggestion too. Strong back, soft front. And letting the breath settle into its natural rhythm now. Noticing as you breathe, the cool air in, the warm breath out. Really noticing the warmth of that out breath as an expression of your heart. That in-breath, your affirmation, your commitment to being present with what is. Taking in the moment. The out-breath, settling into it and offering your warmth. May it be of benefit. And realizing that with that warm out breath, you're not only sending the warmth of your heart into the world around you, it's landing on you. The first place that warm out-breath touches is the surface of your lips, your face. May I find ease. This brilliant, warm, limitless heart that you have in all its glorious perfections and imperfections. Letting the energy of that dissipate throughout your body. You can imagine your heart center as a glowing sun, a flame, and every in-breath, every time you breathe in, you're giving oxygen to that flame. It's growing. The warm breath out. Letting the flame of your heart, the healing energy of your heart, dissipate throughout your body. May it touch areas of pain. May it relieve any emotional stress or burden you're carrying. No analysis needed. Just send yourself some good healing heart energy, good healing love. The in-breath, an acknowledgement of your difficulty and the difficulty of all beings. You share that with them. And sending out warmth, may it ease your own pain, difficulty. So continuing in silence then, just practicing for yourself like this for a moment. The in-breath, an acknowledgement of your own suffering and a wish to free yourself of it. And the out-breath, an offering of kindness and ease for all that ails you. And from this place of a softened, primed heart, inviting in another to this space. This time, someone who's dear to you, a loved one, a dear friend, someone for whom it's easy to automatically feel feelings of connection and concern. Whoever pops to mind first is probably just fine. And bear in mind, it doesn't have to be a human, it could be your pet, especially since it's best in this case to pick some not really complicated situation. Just someone where the love is easy and comes up fast. And when that person or being comes to mind, imagine they're really with you. If you're good with visuals, see if you can see them with your mind's eye. Or maybe just feel their presence in your mind, a familiar smell or something. Make them real in your mind. Feel how you feel being with them. the feelings of love or joy or whatever it might be that come up. And know that this dear one, just like any of us, has suffered. Maybe there's something specific in their life that you know they've gone through. An illness, a financial difficulty, an emotional problem, stress. Know, like anyone, that they're burdened with things. And maybe see their burden as something they're carrying with them. It could be they're got a rain cloud overhead, or they've got to carry a lot of heavy weight. Just give it a form if you can, or a sense. And remember, all along you're being there with your warm heart in its infinite capacity. And on the in-breath, imagine that you're bringing in some of their difficulty. Maybe you're reaching out and grabbing one of the bags they're carrying, or scooping off some of the rain cloud with that in-breath. That in-breath is a manifestation of, may you be free of suffering. And I'm trying to help. And that comes in and meets up with the brilliance of your heart, and it's no match for that. Which there's just like this explosion of light. On the out-breath, that's the warmth you're giving back to them. Sending them healing energy. You don't have to know how to solve their problem. May you be free. And keeping this up, the next in-breath is scooping off a little bit more of that burden. Such a generous act that your heart is a brilliant flame that obliterates the suffering, creating more healing energy that you send back out to this person, to this being. So it's an iterative process, continuing with this practice of transformation for this dear one. Lightening their load with every breath cycle. Every in-breath taking away a little bit more of their burden, transforming it and sending back to them healing energy, light, space, whatever they might need. And now for this dear one, maybe gradually slowing down this practice, maybe thanking them, bowing to them in your mind, thanking them for showing up, and letting them kind of either fade away, or they can just wander into the distance a little bit. You can keep them present if you like. And inviting into this heart space, this generous, kind heart space, this courageous heart space, someone you don't know. And here it's useful to work with somebody who might be familiar to you, maybe a neighbor who you've never really spoken with, but you recognize their face, or someone from work, familiar, maybe you've exchanged a few pleasantries like, hi, how's the weather, but you don't really know them at all. See who comes up at this suggestion. Bring them to mind. We often call this a neutral person or a stranger, someone you just don't really know, but you can kind of bring to mind. And know that just like you, they've got a life, they've got ups and downs, they have difficulties, and they have joys, and a lot in between. So without even knowing anything specific about them, you know that they too suffer. As you did with your dear one, bringing to mind some visual form of their suffering, the rain cloud, the heavy bags. And you've got this brilliant healing energy inside you. You've just been exercising it with your friend. Offer some of it up to them. The in-breath is an acknowledgement of the universality of suffering, an offering to be of help. May I help you out a bit, breathing in some of that on the in-breath. And you can imagine drawing it right into that heart center where there's that flame of compassion, kindness, which obliterates the burden of the suffering and generates more healing energy that you breathe out and send to them. May you be free. You can think of the in-breath when you're scooping off some of their discomfort, that may you be free of suffering. I'd like to take some of it from you and lighten your load, transform it, and send you just what you need. So keeping this up for this stranger. You can really think of the acknowledgement of common humanity in that in-breath, like, I know what it's like to suffer. It doesn't feel good. Let me help out. And the out-breath is, here's some healing. May it be of help. And then gradually letting go of the practice for this person you don't know very well. Maybe you know them a little bit better now. Bowing and thanking them for engaging in this with you. And letting them either wander to the background or disappear eventually. And we'll visit very briefly inviting in one more target here, someone with whom you've had difficulty. Again, titrating this, gauging it carefully. It could a minor irritation, a frustration. It could also just be a situation. If it's easier than coming up with a person, just maybe a situation with whom you've had difficulty. It's easier if it's an individual, but whatever comes to mind right now is fine to work with this for a few moments. And it's important when you bring them to mind to notice how you feel. Maybe there's tightness, pulling back. Again, don't bring in someone who's been abusive or traumatic, just something that's a little uncomfortable to test the boundaries. And know that even though you might not see eye to eye, in the midst of all that, you're both just trying to get through life on earth. And it would be great to help them suffer less without being condescending or judgmental in any way. May you be free of what ails you. And imagine that you can bring that in on the in-breath, that wish to see that humanity in them and help them find release. Bringing that in. This is a brave act. This is generous act that's fueling your brilliant heart. And letting some of that flame ride out on the out-breath, warm, healing energy. May you be free. May you find ease. And continuing this with this person, with this being. Just a few breath cycles to test this out. Gradually lightening their load and giving them ease, relaxation, space, whatever might benefit them. And maybe bringing up the lights in the background and realizing that this stranger is still there, your loved one is still there. And all the beings on planet Earth are there, and all the creatures, and the plants, all just trying to get by and find some ease, stability, taking that in, feeling the connection, and sending out a wish for ease, for space, for love. May all beings be free from suffering and its causes. May they find happiness and its causes. May we be free. And taking a moment to wish that the benefits of this work together are spread out in infinite directions. And may it benefit all the power tools outside. That's what I love about teaching in cities. Yeah. So we have a couple minutes. We're just a couple minutes before noon. And I would like to give a little space around that. I understand if anybody has a hard deadline, and I'm not going to let this go too far, but I'd like to give 5 minutes for anybody who'd like to spend that time. I really try to respect time boundaries. But we just went through a lot. I chose to go through all the targets. However, when you're practicing, it's sometimes good for like one session just to maybe do the self and pick one to work with for a while, like the neutral person, and to keep up with it, especially if there's a relationship in your life where there's challenge. It's a very interesting practice to change how you feel about that whole thing and then what you bring to it in the real world. but I'd like to make some, if anybody has any questions or comments or reflections, make some space for that. Yeah.
I just have a question about energetic boundaries and like, I appreciated the guidance around like choosing people, situations that would not be too much. But if you're in practice and you think you chose a really good target and then you realize, oh, this is right at the edge of
Yeah.
like having that energetic boundary, like of like, how do I explain, but like not allowing it to take like all of your heart space, like how do you have any guidance on like calibrating that
Yeah.
in the moment where this didn't really happen for me in this practice now, but I could imagine in another situation, like being like, oh, I went too big, shoot. Right. How do you kind of back out a little bit with still keeping in the practice?
Yeah. Well, what I recommend in these situations is just to look at that for yourself, and coming from a place of self-compassion. Can I do it? You might feel like, oh, this is too much. Okay, back off. If one really good important suggestion is in any of these kinds of practices, if anything ever feels like too much, release the specific practice for a moment. It's really good to just ground in the body, feel the belly, feel the breath, feel the earth underneath your feet, and let go of that particular thing. So you can always take this pause and just sit and then, decide what you want to do next based on how you're doing. This is why it's important to kind of have that self-compassion or at least self-care thing a little bit exercised. That's why I mentioned it as kind of a prereq. So in the midst of it, then you can do that check-in and decide, sometimes that's why I say you can have the loved one stay there. You can do anything in here. You can have Obi-Wan Kenobi show up. I mean, really, you can do it. That's what's amazing. What I love about this practice is humans have all these capacities of mind and imagery and magic. We can do that with our minds. Make use of it. Bring it all to bear on this process. So you can when we work with self-compassion, sometimes we have a compassionate image we work with, which could be a friend, a spiritual figure, Obi-Wan Kenobi, anybody, right? So you could draw on the strength of your loved one there, feel grounded in it, and then decide, okay, am I going to try it? And then if it's too much, then say, maybe in a couple weeks, I'm going to take someone who's a little bit less difficult for me, So again, always coming, and then again, that same instruction I gave a couple times already, that I'm just going to back off and now breathe in for anybody who's feeling triggered right now and breathe out for all of us. That's what I love. I mean, and one thing I haven't said yet is, and this is another thing, one of the things that I made of, there's a little QR code when you leave, if you haven't scanned it. I created a folder of just a couple resources for you all. There's 2 different recordings of me guiding Tonglen that you could work with, one more formal, one more recent, casual, and then some readings. And one of them in there is a very short essay by Pema Chodron called Transforming the Heart of Suffering. She's just so good at just making everything accessible. But one of the things she talks about a lot is that kind of thing, and how we can take Tonglen right out onto the street. Breathe in for all of us, breathe out kindness. Like, what a gift is that? Because first of all, that makes you walk down the street with more kindness, right? And it's potentially beneficial. So you can walk with it, you can live it, titrate it, make it your own. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, question, yeah, and then, sorry.
I'm Michael, and this is a really potent practice.
Yeah.
And what came up for me, I think, is my conditioned self is afraid that I'm not going to come back. It's really potent. And just, is that the point? Right? What would you say?
Can you tell me more about that experience of fear?
I mean, it's ultimately, it's an expression of peace.
You were afraid that you wouldn't come back from what?
At least within the meditation, I just feel held in just a really incredible ocean of warmth, effectively, and love. And I feel like I could stay there forever and not come back and do basically nothing but meditation. And I think my conditioned self says, I can't function here. What if I don't come back from this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so the real issue is, it's great to be there and feel like it's beneficial. If the fears come up, you can also just let go of maybe that's a cue to you to kind of take it down a notch. You can do a couple things. You could just fold the fear in, like I talked about before, like, because ultimately, this kind of practice and a lot of compassion practice will create, this sounds counterintuitive, a lightness. Because you are able to be present with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, right? You can, oh, here it goes. That's life. We all go through it. Here's some more. Bring it, I don't say bring it on. I just stop back from that one, but here it is, right? And there's this humor that can evolve around that, and just kind of get perspective on it and just fold it in. But if it feels like it might panic, you said the fear, then you can just do what I was saying before, just coming back to basic breath awareness, going into your body, maybe cool air in, warm air out, simplify the transformation so it's not about something, to kind of loosen it a little bit. I think that, and also just grounding that makes yourself present. If you ever, one really good piece of advice, if you ever get panicky or anxious in a practice, simplify the practice to just being present, and then engage with sensation. There's nothing more now than sensation. That's where you meet the world, right? So rubbing your hands together or whatever, or something like that. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. One more, and then we should probably stop. Yes, sorry.
I'll be quick.
Yes.
So I have a quick comment and then a question. So the comment is, during our compassion course a few months ago, and even during this Tonglen practice, I realized that my favorite part about it is just taking agency over your own experience of taking a hard feeling or taking something that feels uncomfortable, alchemizing it, and then releasing it back as something generative. And so that's what I really like. And I also noticed that this would naturally increase your capacity to hold your own experience, right? And so that's kind of the question that I wanted to ask. Like, how do you think this impacts your ability to increase your own capacity?
Well, there's a couple things that you said there. One was, I love the word alchemy. I often say it is like magic. You're transforming suffering into ease. I think that because you are practicing being present with suffering and not doing the natural inclination of running away or this or that, you are increasing your capacity to care. So there is this, and there is evidence when people do repeated compassion practice, that not only do they have enhanced well-being, less depression and anxiety, they also recover from stress faster. And it can lead to acts of altruism. So there is something, you are tweaking your capacity. You're exercising your compassion. And if just like you exercise your bicep, it's going to get bigger, you exercise your compassion, it gets bigger. Yeah. So thank you for that. I don't know, did that help? I mean, that was, okay, good. Anyway, we should stop. I don't want to keep anybody here. Thank you so much. It was such an honor.